My husband's cheating and my revenge exploded when my slideshow exposed his pregnant mistress, stolen money, and years of cruel lies. Owen and I had been married for 5 years when things started feeling off. It wasn't just the usual issues, like guarding his phone or staying out late. It was the cruel little comments that began piling up. One night, when I questioned him about coming home at 2 a.m, smelling of perfume, he said, "Maybe if you lost some weight, I wouldn't need to work so late." Another time, he accidentally showed our friends a terrible photo of me sleeping with my mouth open, captioned, "Living with this every night," in our group chat. When I confronted him, he snapped, "Learn to take a joke, or people will think you're pathetic." At a dinner party, he interrupted my story to tell everyone, "Don't mind her. She gets confused about basic facts. It's cute but embarrassing." Then he patted my hand like I was a child. My best friend texted me later saying, "Are you okay? Owen was being a complete jerk to you." Every year, we hosted a huge charity fundraiser at our house. It was my thing. I organized everything, inviting over 50 people, including all our family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors. I'd spent months planning this one because we were raising money for a children's hospital where my niece had received treatment. On the night of the event, everything was perfect. We'd raised nearly $15,000 in donations, people were having a great time, and I felt proud of what we'd accomplished. Then Owen asked for everyone's attention. He clinked his glass and said he had a surprise announcement that couldn't wait. My first thought was that he'd secured a big donation. Instead, he pulled out a small jewelry box and got down on one knee in front of me. Everyone gasped. We were already married, so what was happening? He opened the box to reveal a diamond eternity band and announced to the entire crowd that I was pregnant after our long struggle with fertility. I was stunned. I wasn't pregnant. We weren't even trying. Before I could say anything, the room erupted. People were crying, cheering, and hugging me. My mom broke down sobbing, overjoyed about her first grandchild. His parents were already discussing names. My boss, who was there, promised me extended maternity leave. Owen slipped the ring on my finger, hugged me tightly, and whispered, "Just go with it," in my ear. Then he kissed me deeply, as if we were sharing a beautiful moment. I felt physically sick but couldn't process what was happening fast enough to react. For hours, I had to pretend. People touching my stomach, giving me advice, asking about due dates. Meanwhile, Owen was beaming, accepting congratulations, acting like father of the year. I was trapped in a nightmare while fundraising for children's cancer. I couldn't even escape to cry because it was my event. When everyone finally left, I confronted him. He laughed it off, saying he thought it would be cute to announce it this way, and that we could just tell everyone I'd lost the pregnancy in a few weeks. Who does that? When I pressed harder, he got annoyed, saying I was overreacting and should be grateful for the expensive ring. I couldn't sleep that night. His behavior was so bizarre, so cruel. Around 3 a.m, I heard his phone buzz. He was passed out drunk, so I checked it. There was a message from Steve W. saying, "Did she buy it? Is it done?" My hands shaking, I opened their message history. Steve wasn't Steve, it was Tracy, his pregnant girlfriend of 18 months. The announcement was Owen's sick solution to explain why he'd need to be supporting a friend through tough times, when, in reality, he'd be with her during her pregnancy. I scrolled through hundreds of messages, pictures of them together, screenshots of my personal calendar so he could plan their dates when I was busy, pictures of me that he'd sent her to mock. He'd been sharing our most intimate conversations and financial details. The final blow. They'd been in our home while I was at my mom's birthday weekend. They'd slept in our bed, taken pictures in our shower. She'd tried on my clothes, and they'd taken the pregnancy test that morning. She was actually pregnant with his child. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I made a plan. Over the next week I pretended everything was normal. I contacted Tracy privately, and surprisingly, she had no idea Owen was married. He told her I was his unstable sister who lived with him because I couldn't function alone. The pictures of us together were explained away as keeping up appearances for family. She was devastated. We met secretly and she showed me more evidence, love letters, gifts, plans they'd made for their future. He'd bought them tickets to Paris for a baby moon using our joint account. He'd been systematically stealing from our savings to fund his double life. Over $10,000 gone. 3 weeks after the announcement, I organized a pregnancy celebration dinner at our house. I invited everyone who'd been at the fundraiser, family, friends, colleagues, neighbors. Owen was nervous but played along, thinking I'd finally accepted the lie. As everyone gathered, I stood up to give a toast. I thanked them for coming to celebrate this special time. Then I announced I had a presentation about our journey to parenthood. Picture this, our living room is packed. The same people who just a few weeks ago were hugging me, crying, and telling me how happy they were, are back in my house, plates of catered Italian food in their hands, wine everywhere. My mom is literally beaming from ear to ear. Owen has his arm around me, squeezing my shoulder like he's the world's proudest husband. I can feel my jaw clench every time he does it, but I smile because I've worked so hard for this moment. Honestly, if you've ever had to fake joy while your insides are boiling, you know the feeling. My stomach was in knots. I was sweating in places I didn't even know could sweat. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my glass. But I kept it together because I knew what was about to happen would be worth every second of this humiliation. I let everyone settle in. People are chatting, passing around baby name books. Someone actually brought one. Owen's dad is already offering to build us a crib. My mom is whispering to my aunt about knitting tiny hats. I stand up, tap my glass, and ask for everyone's attention. Owen looks at me with this smug, "See, I told you this would be fun" smile, and I want to slap it off his face, but I don't. I just smile back. "Thank you all for being here," I say. "You've all been so supportive. It means the world to me and Owen." I swallow so hard I almost choke. I told you I'd have a little presentation about our journey to parenthood. So, let's walk down memory lane together. I hook my laptop up to the TV and start the slideshow. At first, it's just normal stuff. Photos of me and Owen from when we first met at the airport. For those asking, we got stuck on a delayed flight and ended up sharing a $12 sandwich at 2 in the morning. Not a cutesy rom-com story, but whatever. Our wedding, vacations, dumb couple selfies. The crowd is eating it up, laughing, cooing. Then I flip the slide. The first text appears on the screen, a screenshot. It's Owen texting Steve W., but the message is from Tracy's actual number. I made sure to highlight it on the slide, thanks to iMessage showing contact info. The message reads, "Did she buy it? Is it done?" The room goes silent, dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Owen's smile starts to slip just a little, and he shoots me a look, half confusion, half panic. I click again. The next slide is a photo of Tracy, smiling, very clearly pregnant, standing in our bathroom holding a positive pregnancy test. The timestamp is right there, along with my shower curtain, my shampoo bottle, my robe on the hook. People start shifting. My cousin literally gasps. My dad's jaw drops. I click again. Screenshots of messages appear, Owen sending her pictures of me captioned, "Look at her. Can you believe she still thinks I love her?" The room starts murmuring. Owen is frozen. He tries to stand up and say something, but I raise my hand and say, "Sit down." I'm shaking, but I don't care. I am done letting him control the narrative. The next slide shows bank statements, transfers from our joint account to some Paris travel fund, receipts for gifts, a plane ticket to Paris with both their names. I zoom in on the dates, right after my miscarriage. The room is starting to turn on him. His mom looks like she's about to throw up. I keep going, more messages. Tracy's love letters to Owen, photos of them in my clothes, in my bed. My best friend covers her mouth, looking at me like she wants to kill him herself. The final slide is a WhatsApp message from Owen to Tracy, bragging about how easy it was to convince the crazy sister me to host the fundraiser and how he'd use the pregnancy as cover to spend more time with Tracy once her belly started to show. I let that one stay up for a solid 10 seconds, letting everyone read. I wanted it burned into their memories. Then I closed the laptop. I look right at Owen, who is now white as a sheet, sweating, stammering, trying to explain himself but unable to string together a coherent sentence. He's looking around for a friendly face, but there's nothing. Not even his mom will look at him. I say, "So Owen, do you want to tell everyone the real reason you needed so much support lately, or should I keep going?" He tries to talk. He stands up, starts blabbering about me being unstable, that I'm confused, that it's all a misunderstanding. He says Tracy is just a friend, that the texts are out of context. Yeah, out of context. Try me. At this point, my mom, my sweet, gentle, cardigan-wearing mom, stands up and walks over to him. She looks him dead in the eye and says, "Get out of my daughter's house." Then, in front of everyone, she takes the ring off my finger and throws it at him. It bounces off his chest and lands in his pasta. I swear, I almost laughed. Owen tries to grab my arm, but my dad steps in and shoves him back. There's yelling. My uncle steps between us. A couple of his friends try to intervene, but my sister is already on the phone calling Tracy. I had warned her ahead of time that she might need to show up. Tracy, to her credit, is already parked outside with her mom for backup. So, what happens? Tracy walks in, pregnant belly and all. She makes eye contact with Owen and says, "You told me she was your sister." The room erupts. His parents start shouting at him. My mom is crying. My best friend is hugging me so tightly I can barely breathe. Tracy's mom looks ready to throw punches, and Owen? He tries to run out of the house. But my neighbor, a 5'2" retired volleyball coach named Hart, blocks the door and says, "You're not going anywhere until you explain yourself." Now he's trapped, surrounded by everyone he's lied to for years, and he has no idea what to say. He starts yelling at me, calling me vindictive and crazy, saying I'm ruining his life, that I set him up. I let him scream. I don't care. I'm shaking, but I'm not moving. Not this time. I look at everyone and say, I'm not pregnant. I was never pregnant, but Owen's girlfriend is. I motion to Tracy, who is now sobbing in her mom's arms. He's been lying to all of us, stealing from me, cheating, gaslighting me for years. I turn to Owen and say, "You're done here." My dad opens the door. Owen bolts, slamming into the porch railing on the way out, nearly falling down the steps. That night, I barely slept. The adrenaline was insane. I kept replaying everything in my head. My phone was blowing up with messages. Some people apologizing for not seeing it sooner, others just checking if I was okay. Tracy and I ended up texting until 3 in the morning. She was devastated, but also relieved in a weird way to finally know the truth. But the fallout? Oh, the fallout was just beginning. Owen's stuff was still in the house. His parents were texting me, begging me not to press charges. My boss asked if I needed time off. Tracy's mom wanted to know if we could meet. And Owen? He was about to find out what happens when you humiliate and betray the wrong woman. If you think this is wild, just wait for what happens next. Part 2 coming soon. First update, if you read my first post, you know what went down. If you didn't, buckle up, because things since the slideshow have been a level of chaos I wasn't prepared for, even after nuking my own living room in front of about 50 people. I kept thinking, surely I've seen the worst, right? Nope. It's like people saw the fireworks and decided to set their own lives on fire for a turn. It's been a few weeks since that night. The immediate aftermath was intense. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating for 48 hours. I was getting texts, DMs, even a couple of old-school voicemails from people who'd been at the dinner and others who'd only heard about it secondhand. My notifications were so insane, I genuinely considered throwing my phone into the compost and starting fresh. At first, most messages were classic, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I can't believe Owen did that. But it didn't take long for the spin to start. Owen, despite being caught red-handed, started reaching out to mutual friends, some of my extended family, and his entire side. My cousin Savannah sent me a screenshot of Owen telling her I'd lost it, that I'd hacked his phone and fabricated messages because I couldn't handle him leaving and wanted attention. The sheer audacity. But it worked on some people, especially the conflict-avoidant ones who just wanted things to go back to normal. There's always that subset, right? People who don't want drama because it makes their lives messy. Here's the part that still makes my jaw clench. Owen's parents, who were at my house for the whole reveal, didn't call me, not even a "how are you doing?" Instead, his mom texted my mom, saying it was unfortunate how the situation was handled and that maybe it would be best if Owen could come by to collect his things without further escalation. My mom, usually the most patient, cardigan-wearing, tea-brewing person alive, called me practically hissing down the line. She said, if anyone is escalating, it's their son. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Owen, meanwhile, was blowing up my phone with messages that got nastier as the hours ticked by. At first, it was, "Let's talk like adults. We can fix this if you just apologize for embarrassing me." Apologize for exposing his double life? I have no words. When I ignored him, it turned to threats. "I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done, and you'll be sorry when people find out who you really are." He even accused me of ruining Tracy's life and said I should watch myself because people talk. I blocked him. He started emailing. I blocked those. He started messaging through random numbers, then tried mutual friends. He even called my dad, who has never liked Owen. Not even at our wedding, Dad answered and just said, "Lose my number." I found out later when Dad showed up at my place, holding his phone like it had a disease. The family fallout was worse than I expected. I thought the friend group would be the biggest mess, but family drama is on another level. My mom wanted to host a healing dinner and invite Owen's parents, like we could untangle the last 5 years over roast chicken and store-bought pie. My dad, on the other hand, wanted to file a police report for fraud. Not sure he understands what counts as fraud, but points for effort. Meanwhile, my brother Hank started a group chat called "Owen is Dead to Us" and kept adding Owen back in every time he left just to annoy him. The wildest part was Tracy. I thought she'd vanished to lick her wounds, but she called me, not a text, an actual call. She said, "I don't know who to talk to. My mom is furious and wants to move us out of state. Owen keeps showing up at my work. I don't know what to do. I told her I wasn't her therapist, but I'm not a monster. She needed someone who understood how manipulative Owen could be, and apparently that was me. So, we met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, with her mom parked outside watching me like I might bite. Tracy looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in a month. She pushed a stack of envelopes across the table, her hands shaking. "He's still sending me these," she said. Inside were cards with Owen's signature, plus receipts for stuff he'd bought for the baby. With my money, I might add. Tracy said she was considering a restraining order, but her mom wasn't sure if it would make things worse. I had no advice for that. I barely knew how to get through my own day. We sat there, two women lied to, and for a weird moment, it felt almost normal. There was a sense that neither of us was the villain here, even if the story looked wild from the outside. Back at home, things were anything but normal. I had to deal with practical stuff, changing the locks, figuring out which bills were in my name, spoiler, not as many as I thought, and packing up Owen's junk. My mom insisted on helping, which meant she showed up with 3 empty suitcases and a box of lemon bars, lecturing me about setting boundaries while folding my laundry and reorganizing my pantry. I didn't have the heart to stop her. Dad came by twice, mostly to glare at the door and threaten to break Owen's legs if he showed up, which, for my dad, is a lot. Things got messier when Owen started playing dirty. He emailed our landlord, who I'd never met in person. Owen always handled that, and tried to get me taken off the lease, claiming I was no longer a resident and was harassing him and his pregnant partner. I found out because the landlord emailed me asking for clarification. I had to send my ID, utility bills, and a copy of the marriage certificate just to prove I lived there. The landlord was awkward, saying he didn't want to get involved in personal disputes but hinting that maybe one of us should move out for everyone's peace of mind. The biggest shock was how many people didn't want to pick a side. I get it, nobody wants to be in the middle of a breakup. But after everything, I thought there'd be some basic sense of right and wrong. Instead, it was all, let's just move on. It's none of our business, or my personal favorite. These things are never black and white. Sorry, but if your spouse fakes your pregnancy to cover his real one with someone else, that's not a gray area. People will do anything to avoid drama in their own lives. There were real consequences, though. Owen tried to come back to the house to get his stuff. I told him to text me a list and I'd leave it on the porch. Instead, he showed up while I was home, pounding on the door, yelling that I was hiding his property. I called my dad, who arrived in 10 minutes flat. There was a weird standoff on the porch, Owen shouting, Dad standing with his arms crossed, me behind the door texting Brenda to call the neighbor if things got ugly. Owen finally left, but not before threatening to call the cops for theft. I told him to go ahead and try. My parents ramped things up after that. Mom called Owen's mom, which went as well as you'd expect. Owen's mom insisted marriage is hard and boys will be boys. I almost threw up hearing that secondhand. My mom told her if Owen showed up at my place again, she'd file a restraining order herself, then hung up. Dad started researching marital asset division and left printouts all over my kitchen. Thanks, Dad. I talked to Owen one more time in person because he wouldn't stop emailing about his stuff and his rights. We met in the driveway. I wasn't letting him inside again. He tried to act calm, saying he just wanted to resolve things peacefully, but then ranted about how I'd ruined everything and turned everyone against him. I told him point blank that he did that himself. He got in my face accusing me of manipulating Tracy and stealing his money. I said if he kept harassing me or Tracy, I'd file for a restraining order for both of us. He laughed, but his hands were shaking. I didn't back down. I said, "You're not coming back in. End of story." He left, but not before slamming his fist into the mailbox so hard the door fell off. I had to fix it with duct tape. A fitting metaphor. Tracy and I aren't friends, not really, but there's a weird connection now. She texts sometimes, usually late at night, with updates about Owen trying to reach out or her mom wanting to move. I send short, blunt replies, mostly because I don't know what else to say. I did help her block his number and showed her how to lock down her socials. There's also the money problem. I found out Owen drained more from our joint account than I realized. Small withdrawals, gift cards, random Cash App transactions. I had to go through months of statements, highlight everything, and send it to the bank to freeze the account. The bank was sympathetic but slow, and Owen kept trying to reset the password. At one point, I got a fraud alert because he tried to use the account from a weird location in another city. It took days to sort out. At home, I can't relax. Every sound outside makes me look up, half expecting Owen to be lurking. My dad installed a camera by the front door, which just makes me more aware of how many people come and go in a day. The mail piles up, the dishes, the laundry. Everything feels both too much and not enough. I keep thinking, when does it get normal again? Does it ever? The most surprising thing is how much people want there to be a good guy and a bad guy. Owen is obviously trash for what he did, but I keep getting asked, did you see any signs, or do you think you drove him to cheat? As if relationships are a neat equation where someone's always at fault. It's messier than that. Owen's always been a little mean, a little sharp with his jokes, but I thought it was just his way of dealing with stress. His mom's the same, always making digs, pretending it's all in good fun. I used to think if I let things go, he'd chill out. Turns out, letting things go just made him push further. So, that's where things are now. I'm not living some brave new life. I'm still in the house, still fielding calls from the landlord about cooperation between tenants, still trying to get Owen's name off the utility bills. Tracy's dealing with her own mess. Brenda's trying to get me to join her for a night out, but the idea of seeing people feels exhausting. But here's the thing, I'm not letting Owen back in, not physically, not emotionally, not financially. Every day, I get a little more stubborn about that. The last time he tried to get in touch, it was through a mutual friend, Ricardo, who called to hear my side. I told him if Owen tries to come back, I'll have the locks changed again and the cops on speed dial. Then today, I got a hand-delivered letter, not mailed, from Owen's lawyer. He's threatening to sue me for defamation, emotional distress, and wants equitable division of assets, the car, half the savings, and compensation for lost business opportunities because I slandered him publicly. I stood in my kitchen, letter in hand, trying to decide if I should laugh or scream. So, if anyone's still reading, congrats. You've made it to the end of round 2. I wish I could say I know what happens next, but I'm just getting started. Second update, if you're still following this saga, props to you for sticking around. I thought things would calm down after the lawyer letter, but I should have known better. If anything, that was just Owen warming up. The universe must be bored because it's throwing new curveballs every other day. Let's start with the lawyer. Letter, hand-delivered, shoved under my door in a cheap envelope with my name spelled wrong. Classic. It was full of legalese about defamation, emotional distress, lost opportunities, and Owen's demand for the car, half the savings, and compensation for public embarrassment. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I texted a picture to my brother Hank, who replied, "Is this real, or did he use ChatGPT for the template?" For a hot minute, I considered ignoring it, but my parents weren't having that. My dad wanted to show this clown what a real lawsuit looks like, which, coming from a guy who hasn't worn a suit since 2009, was kinda funny. My mom started calling anyone she knew who'd been through a divorce, asking if I could get everything annulled for emotional reasons. I had to Google if that's a thing. Spoiler, it's not, at least not here. Their hearts were in the right place, but it made me feel more alone sometimes. I love them, but I needed less energy and more actual help. So I did what normal people do. I Googled local attorneys, read reviews, and called one. The phone call was awkward, mostly because I had to explain everything out loud. The woman on the other end kept saying, "Wait, he did what at the fundraiser?" She told me to take photos of everything, keep all communications, and under no circumstances let Owen back in the house or agree to private meetings. She said the defamation claim was probably just bluster, but I should still be careful. Great. The next few days were me hoarding receipts and texting Brenda every time I felt like throwing my phone through a window. Owen kept ramping things up. He started showing up at the house again, first knocking, then pounding, then standing outside for half an hour, calling people on speakers so I could hear him. I watched from the living room window, phone in hand, ready to call the cops if he tried anything. At one point he brought his dad, who stood there, arms folded, staring at the house like he expected me to hand over the keys. I called my dad, who showed up in slippers and an old hoodie, looking so unimpressed it was almost art. There was a silent standoff on the front lawn, 4 grown adults, not saying anything, pretending it wasn't freezing. Eventually, Owen's dad muttered something, and they left. I double-locked the door and texted the family, "If you see Owen or his dad, don't answer. I'll handle it." The social fallout kept spreading. Some people unfollowed me on Instagram, whatever. Others slid into my DMs to hear my side. It's weird how people you barely know feel entitled to the details of your life if there's drama. I kept my replies short. Brenda, on the other hand, went nuclear. She posted a story calling out Owen's narcissist energy, tagged him, and started a comment war that lasted 2 days. I muted everything because I was too busy dealing with real-life mess. The weirdest interactions were in public. I went to Target for paper towels and a candle and ran into Savannah from Owen's side. She gave an awkward half-smile and said, "So, how's everything?" Like we were catching up after a vacation. There was a pause that lasted way too long, and I just shrugged and said, "You know?" She nodded like that, explained it, and turned to the next aisle. It's wild how people want the bare minimum so they can say they checked in. Owen's mom finally reached out, not to apologize, but to discuss logistics. She wanted to know when Owen could pick up his belongings, which I was refusing to release. I told her I wasn't refusing anything. I'd packed everything he listed, put it in the garage, and changed the code. She got snippy, saying it was unreasonable not to trust Owen to come inside. I said after what he did, he's not setting foot in this house again. She lectured me about forgiveness and how everyone makes mistakes. I told her this wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. If Owen tried to come inside, I'd call the cops. The call ended with her saying she was so disappointed in how I'd handled things. I laughed. If being disappointing to people like that is wrong, I don't want to be right. The house was weird without Owen. Not sad, but every time I walked into a room, I noticed the little things he used to do that annoyed me, leaving shoes in the hallway, using my favorite mug, turning the thermostat down to save money. Now it was quiet, almost peaceful when my parents weren't hovering. The money stuff was still a nightmare. The bank froze our joint account, but Owen kept trying to access it from different devices. I got emails about suspicious activity, then a call from the fraud department. They wanted to confirm if I was trying to transfer several $1,000s out. I wasn't. I had to go in person, bring my ID, and sit in a tiny office with a guy who looked about 12, explaining everything again. He was polite but uncomfortable, especially when I showed him the lawyer letter. He said the account would stay frozen until we sorted out the divorce. I left with a headache and a stack of paperwork. Tracy kept popping up. She texted late one night saying she was scared Owen might show up at her place. He'd been calling non-stop, sometimes from blocked numbers, even threatening to take the baby if she didn't help him clear his name. I told her she needed to talk to someone, family, police, anyone. She said her mom was on alert, but she just wanted someone to hear her. I felt for her, but I was overwhelmed. I can't fix her life and mine at the same time. The next day, Brenda showed up with coffee and donuts like a chaos fairy godmother. She sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, reading out messages from people taking sides. Apparently, Ricardo, Owen's friend who was always too invested in our marriage, was telling people I was dangerous and unstable. Brenda laughed so hard she almost snorted coffee. She said, "If you're the unstable one, I'm a yoga influencer." We both lost it for a minute, and it felt good to laugh. But then Brenda got serious. She asked if I'd thought about moving out, starting fresh somewhere else. I hadn't. The idea made me feel like I'd be running away. At the same time, staying meant living with the ghosts of Owen's nonsense. Brenda said, "You don't owe anyone this house. You can start over." I told her I'd think about it, but I could see she wanted me to go. Not because she thought I was weak, but because she worried I'd never be free if I stayed. My parents had their own opinions. Mom wanted me to move in with them just for a while, but I knew that would last 2 days before we all lost our minds. Dad wanted me to stand my ground and not let Owen win. They bickered about it at dinner one night, right in front of me like I wasn't there. Mom said, "She needs support." Dad said, "She needs independence." I snapped, "I need you to stop arguing and let me figure it out." They went quiet, which was a relief. Things came to a head when Owen tried to come back for his tools. He texted first, saying he'd be by at noon. I told him I'd leave them on the porch. At 11:30, he started calling, texting, then calling again. At noon, he was banging on the door so hard the neighbor's dog started barking. I opened the window and told him his stuff was outside. He shouted that I was stealing from him, that he knew his rights, and if I didn't let him in, he'd call the cops. I said, "Go ahead." He started recording me with his phone, narrating that I was refusing lawful entry. I rolled my eyes and told him to leave or I'd call the cops myself. He grabbed his stuff and stomped off, but not before kicking over the flower pot by the porch. Real mature. After that, Tracy texted me. Owen had tried to contact her again, this time through a mutual friend, Cecilia. He was telling people I'd brainwashed Tracy into turning against him, that I was jealous and wanted to ruin his life. Cecilia, to her credit, told him he was out of line but also texted me, saying she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive. I wanted to scream. Why is it always on women to forgive the people who hurt them? Things weren't just tense with Owen. Tracy's family was dealing with their own drama. Her mom called, asking if I thought Owen would try to take the baby. I told her I couldn't predict anything but to keep documenting everything. She sounded tired, like she'd aged 10 years in a month. I felt a weird kinship with her, even though we barely knew each other. It wasn't all misery. There were almost funny moments, like when my mom showed up with a box of baby clothes she'd bought just in case. She sat on my bed holding a tiny hat and said she felt stupid for believing Owen. I told her she wasn't stupid, just hopeful, and that wasn't a bad thing. She hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. Dad popped his head in, saw us crying, and retreated to the garage, Classic. But the tension never let up. Every time I thought things might settle, something new happened. Owen filed a motion to have me removed from the property because I was creating a hostile environment. The landlord called again, wanting to know when this would be over. I tried to explain, but he just wanted to avoid drama. I started looking up apartments to see what was out there and realized how expensive everything is. Part of me wanted to leave it all behind, but another part was stubborn. Why should I be the one to leave when I did nothing wrong? Things boiled over at the next family dinner. Mom wanted to invite Owen's parents to talk things out. Dad said, "Over my dead body." Hank said, "Let's just egg their house." He was mostly joking. I lost it. I told everyone I was sick of being the only one who had to keep it together, that I was tired of being the bigger person. There was a long silence. Then Mom apologized. Dad apologized. Even Hank put his phone down and apologized. I said, "I just want a normal life again." No one disagreed. The last straw for now came this week. I was coming home from the store, arms full of groceries, when I saw Owen's car in the driveway. I stopped cold. He was sitting on the hood, scrolling through his phone like he owned the place. I walked up and told him to leave. He said he just wanted to talk. I said there was nothing left to say. He said he'd take me down with him if I didn't make things right. I told him if he didn't leave, I'd call the cops. He got in my face close enough that I could smell his cologne, ranting about how I ruined his life, how he could have had it all if I just played along. I told him again to leave. He finally did, but not before spitting on the ground and saying, "You'll regret this." So, that's where things stand, and something tells me it's about to get messier. Final update. This is the final chapter, or at least the last one I'm posting here, because my life barely feels like mine anymore. If you've made it through the last 3 rounds, congrats. You basically have a PhD in secondhand chaos. I kept thinking there'd be a tipping point, some moment where things settled. But every time I thought I was getting my balance, something new landed on my head. After the driveway showdown, Owen on the hood of his car threatening me while I clutched groceries and tried not to scream, I didn't sleep much for days. My phone was a landmine, text from Brenda asking if I wanted to crash at her place, Dad sending links on how to file a restraining order, Mom alternating between recipes and maybe you should move home for a bit. Meanwhile, the legal stuff kept grinding. The lawyer I found, let's call her Greta, because apparently I collect Gretas now, was decent, but there's only so much you can do when the other side is allergic to reality. Owen's lawyer sent another letter demanding immediate mediation. Greta told me not to panic. It was just posturing. But I felt like I was being stalked by paperwork. Every day brought a new envelope, email, or notification. I started keeping a folder in my notes app to track who was threatening what. There's a weird kind of tired that comes from fighting over the same stuff on repeat, like a glitchy video game. Same level, different monsters. Owen would text about his tools, then his PlayStation, then how I owed him for emotional labor. I started leaving his stuff on the porch in boxes labeled in Sharpie, tools, electronics, junk. He'd pick them up at weird hours, never alone, sometimes with his dad, sometimes with Ricardo, whose stare always lasted too long. They never came in, but the tension was there, like a thunderstorm that wouldn't break. Then there was Tracy. I didn't expect her to stay in touch, but she did. Texts a couple of times a week, sometimes a photo of her cat, sometimes a meme, sometimes venting about Owen's guilt trip emails. Her mom called once, asking if I'd heard anything about Owen planning something. I hadn't and told her so, but I could hear the worry in her voice. Tracy was due any day. The last time we met, her idea. At a little cafe uptown, she looked so tired. She said she was trying to get her head straight before the baby came and asked if I thought Owen would try for custody. I told her I didn't know what he was capable of anymore, but to keep her family close and document everything. My parents kept circling, each on their own orbit. Mom baked enough muffins for a small army and tried to convince me to take a weekend at a spa with her. Dad spent a suspicious amount of time in the garage, fixing things that didn't need fixing and going on walks that just happened to pass by Owen's place. Hank started a spreadsheet of potential replacement sons-in-law, mostly 90 Seconds boy band members and that one guy from the gym who wears Crocs. At least he made me laugh. The house started feeling less like mine. I caught myself looking at the walls, the stupid retro lamp Owen loved, the rug he bought at a yard sale. It felt like living in someone else's leftovers. The landlord kept calling, asking for updates and hinting that maybe I should move out when the lease was up. I half-heartedly scrolled Zillow, not ready to decide, just wanting to see what was out there. Everything was too expensive, too far, too not home. The real escalation came not with a bang but with tiny, stupid annoyances. First the utilities. Owen tried to get the internet shut off for non-payment, even though I'd switched it to my name. The company called, confused, and I spent an hour on hold to sort it out. Then the car insurance. Owen reported the car stolen, even though the title was in both our names. That brought a cop to the house who, after an awkward 15 minutes and a tour of the glove box, left looking bored. The car stayed with me, but the paperwork was endless. Then the trash bill. I got a notice that the account was delinquent. Owen hadn't paid it for months, and the company threatened to stop pickup. I called, explained, paid the balance, and put it in my name. The lady on the phone sounded exhausted, like she dealt with this drama daily. She said, "Just make sure he can't call to cancel anything else. If only it were that easy." The worst was when Owen's mom showed up at 9 in the morning on a Saturday, no warning, holding a box of Owen's childhood mementos and a folder of papers she wanted me to sign. She started with the same lines: "Boys will be boys, don't make things harder than they need to be, family is all you have in the end." I told her politely that I wasn't signing anything until my lawyer saw it and that she needed to stop showing up unannounced. She tried to push past me, saying she just wanted a few things from Owen's old room. I blocked the door. She tried to guilt-trip me, but I didn't move. Eventually, she left the box on the porch and shuffled back to her car. That night, Tracy texted. She was in the hospital, in early labor, baby coming. She was scared. Didn't want Owen to know yet, but wanted me to know just in case. I didn't go but texted back, telling her she'd be a good mom and wasn't alone. The next day, she sent a picture of a healthy baby girl. I showed my mom, who cried. Dad said, "At least some good came out of all this." Hank added the baby's name to his spreadsheet, which made everyone laugh, even through the weirdness. If there's any lesson, it's that people will surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways, sometimes in the best. So if you read all this, thanks for being here. If you're ever at trivia night and see a girl ordering too much pizza and arguing about 90-second song lyrics, come say hi. Just don't ask me about Owen. That chapter's closed, even if the rest of the book is still unwritten.